3, 2, 1.
Hit it. Experience 24 hours of head-to-head AWS sessions from around the world.
Mic check, 1, 2.
Jaws PANKRATION 2021. Up till down.
Hello. Today, I want to share with you and talk to you about serverless integration with zero code. My name is Michael Walmsley. I'm a serverless architect. I work for Accenture in the MyWizard AI Ops group, where I accelerate and support serverless teams. I'm also an AWS serverless community builder. So what are we going to be learning today? Today, I want to share with you my journey of learning how to do serverless integration with zero code. We're going to learn how the API gateway works using serverless framework without Lambda. And we'll finish up with a few key learnings and things that I've learned along the way. This talk is inspired by Farah Campbell and Ben Kehoe, who spoke about the serverless mindset. I want to start with this simple statement. Give your developers a problem and they will code you a solution. This is the developer mindset. To think serverless, we need to break this coding habit. Today, we're going to think differently about solutions. The serverless framework itself is strongly focused on functions as a service, which is great, and I love the Lambda service. But today, I want to show you how we can do this without using Lambda. This means we need to create all the resources that the serverless framework usually automates for Lambda. So how do we get here? To understand how to build this solution, we need to take a closer look at the API gateway. We need to learn how it works so we can control the integrations. Alex Debris has a great article covering the API gateway in more detail. If you are curious, I encourage you to go and read it. So let's have a look at how API requests really work. Understanding how these work is critical for when we're doing direct integrations. If you've been using the serverless framework, the detail of the API gateway is hidden away. And you've never had to worry about how the API gateway calls your code. So let's learn how it works. It all starts with a client making an API request. Requests are first processed by the method request handler. It performs the model validations that you define in the API gateway. And if everything is correct, the request will continue on its journey. The integration request is next. This is where all the work happens. For a Lambda-backed API, it would define the function to be called. In the example today, we are calling this SQS service. The integration request will map the API payload to suit the shape of requests for the SQS service. And it will make the API call to the SQS endpoint that has been configured. The response from the SQS service is processed by the integration response. It will map the service response body into the format your API needs. Control from there passes to the method response, which prepares the payload for the API caller. And magically, our API has been successful. Understanding these four main components helps to unlock the mystery of API integrations. If you go into the console and select an API method, you'll see a page with the same four boxes. And it is in each of these boxes that we will control how each part behaves. All the real magic happens in the integration request and response components. So today I'm going to focus on those components as we walk through the serverless framework configuration. Let's dive deeper into the serverless framework. In this serverless example, there are no functions, just resources. So it looks very different from what we're used to. In essence, we are simply using CloudFormation resources to create our API integration. Here is the rest of the serverless file. And you do notice that I've used Python. It's my favorite runtime. But when you set up your project, you can use your own because right today, we're not actually deploying any code. So how do we go about setting all this up? First, we need to define an SQS queue. In this example, this is a resource for the SQS queue we're using. We need a role with permission for the API gateway to call the SQS send message API on your queue. Then we need the actual API itself, so the API method. And lastly, we need an API deployment, so our API is active on the gateway. The real secret to getting this to work is in the API method. The API method defines the four boxes of the API gateway request. Let's look at how to define the API method. Here we are defining the API integration. The HTTP method defines how to call the SQS API endpoint. The credentials set the role to allow API gateway to call the SQS service. And you can see I've used CloudFormation functions to get the resource names of the linked resources that are created as part of the stack. The URI defines the SQS API endpoint to be called. Mapping of your API requests is handled by velocity templates, or VTL. Learning VTL is the hardest part of writing zero code in AWS. We set up the request template, which maps the API body into the action API of SQS. You can see I have a request template for each of the content types used by my API. The pass-through behavior I've set to never, and this is really important. This controls requests that come in with invalid content types, which will be rejected by the API gateway, which is what we need. In this example, we are only accepting JSON bodies for the API. So now we have mapped the API to the destination service. What happens to the service response? Looking at another section of the API gateway method, we define the integration responses. It takes the destination service response and maps it into the correct shape for your API. Again, we must use VTL templates to do this. In this example, I've mapped only part of the SQS response payload to my API callers. Putting it all together, here is the entire API gateway method. It defines the integration request and response that we just talked through. And here it defined, you can see all 4 boxes from the previous diagrams being shown. As you can see, in the end, all we're doing is using CloudFormation. And you can achieve the same result in the AWS console. I read an article about this subject that goes into a lot more depth, and it has links to a tutorial that takes you through how to set this up in the console. So what are the key learnings? My key learnings are that direct integrations are not hard. In the end, they're all just CloudFormation. And all the hard work is done by the API method resource. When playing with this solution and learning about this, I found that the API deployment resource was quite tricky to use. I found that it only works for the first deployment because it's part of the CloudFormation stack and doesn't get updated as you redeploy. So when you make changes to the API, you'll need to use the AWS CLI to create new deployments. So in the end, I just wanted to prove by doing this article that we can create solutions with zero code. And also prove that they do work and are viable. So the next time you're solving a problem, I want to ask you to ask yourself the following questions. Do I really need to code? And what cloud service could I use instead? Because as soon as you start thinking this way, you are starting to get into that serverless mindset. Here are some links to the references I made in this talk. I encourage you to check them out to learn more. My GitHub repo has the entire working solution. It really only has one file, which is the serverless framework file we've walked through. I encourage you to go and listen to Farah and Ben's talks on the serverless mindset. They're really interesting and thought-provoking. And check out Alex's article. I've gone through a small part of the API gateway. Alex's article goes into a lot more depth. I want to take an opportunity to thank you all for tuning in, and a big thanks to the Japan AWS user group for putting on this awesome event, and for SourceNext for providing Pocket Talk to make this event more accessible. I found that a little bit challenging, but it's been fun, and I hope this has worked really well. Thanks for tuning in today and listening. Bye for now.
Music's loud and I'm feeling alright. It's slow motion, but it's just you and I. Yet the burn makes you feel so alive. And we live in the moment, so you know tonight.